Hey, what's going on, everyone? We're here today with Brett Baker, who we're going to call a jack of all trades here on the 1004 show today. Brett, what's going on, man?
All good, man. Just enjoying. This is my Fridays or my Saturday, so just enjoying my day.
So you're in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I am.
You have a career in journalism, and you've been doing that for over 2 decades. I want to talk about three things today. One, how people can improve their communication skills. Two, how someone could pitch to be on TV or get a story run about them. And then three, a little bit about this wing thing that you did a few weeks ago. So we'll start.
Sounds good.
Perfect. We'll start with the press side of things. And so I started my career in journalism, and so we built courses and teach people how to get press. But it's always good to hear some of the horror stories and good stories on what works and what doesn't when you're in the newsroom.
Okay, yeah. I mean, what works? Obviously, we get a lot of spammy type, stuff from PR companies. They're just casting a wide net and hoping to hook anybody, and that's almost always certainly an immediate delete.
So that's like a hey, me, we're doing this thing, come do this thing. I don't know you, just whatever.
Exactly, yeah. Or, hey, wouldn't it be great? Or I also like the ones that they start off like they've had a previous conversation with you, and you're like, wait, no, we did not talk, so I don't know who you are and what this is. Those are all bad because those are just, another random mine would be the email is actually broken, but because we just get so much of it, and it just, it's hard to filter out anything that's meaningful. So I would say make a personal connection. Like if you want talk to somebody about maybe promoting your story or getting your word out, pick up a phone, call somebody, or say, hey, can you follow me on Twitter? I'd like to shoot you a DM. Something that's just slightly more personal than just mass blasting it and seeing what sticks.
Creating a relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the important part. And there's a lot of things that can be said about the state of journalism today, but at the bottom of it all, I think we're all storytellers and we all want to tell people stories. So that starts though on your end. You've got to, whoever that is that wants us to tell it for them, has to tell us. So they've got to find a way to make that connection and do it other than just, throwing a dart against, a barn or something. I don't even know that's a saying, but you know what I'm saying.
It is now.
Okay.
I like to tell people that it is about creating a relationship, and then also not necessarily trying to get that one feature, but end up becoming a source so that you
Sure.
get mentioned hundreds of times. And so in my market and in other markets, we've been able to get hundreds of mentions or even articles about us because we're helpful to people. And so instead of saying, hey, we're going to get this one nice press piece about us, instead we're going to get this mention about us because we're the experts in this specific industry. And so do you guys call people when you know that someone might be a good source for something like that?
Yeah, sure. Even like this week, I noticed, and I don't know what it's like on the East Coast, but there's a motorcycle that came out like 3 years ago or so. It's called the Honda Grom, and it's bigger than a scooter, smaller than a sport bike, but all of a sudden they're like all over Lincoln. And so I called a couple of the bike shops here, and they're like, yeah, we can't keep them in stock. We've already sold our yearly inventory, and I don't know if we're going to get any. And so, and I had some good talks with those guys, and they put me in touch with some local writers. So we're going to end up doing a story on that. But they're, I think the reaction just calling those guys up and saying, hey, you guys are doing this. I'm interested in knowing more. I think that'll also, who knows what kind of other stories can happen, going down the road. But then those guys are going to be, like you said, sources. Like they're going to be guys I can turn to and say, hey, what's happening with this? And they're going to either give me good info or point me in the right direction.
I believe it was yesterday, the day before, a local reporter called me and asked me for something. And it's just like these things happen all the time, and it happens dozens, maybe even hundreds of times a year, and that adds up. And so instead of that one piece, you're the industry expert in that, and people end up seeing you on some random story that actually might have some more value to it instead of just the one thing about you in your business. What's like the worst pitch you've ever seen?
Ooh, man, there's a lot of them. It all did, like I said, it all tends to blend together. But yeah, the ones that like come off as like, hey, we've already had a conversation and we've already made contact, and I just want to follow up about this. And it's like, What are you even? That one, or they'll get your name wrong, or they'll get the name of your show wrong, or your station wrong, and it's like, well, you've sunk yourself even before you set sail. So I got no time.
Yeah, that's true. You know, putting in a little bit of um, sweat equity into it is important. Making sure you cross the T's, dot the I's, get the person's name right. Right? You're Barrett
Yeah,
Baker, right? Not Brett Baker. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
I mean, I think it's so true, and it's just like you're just throwing, would you say, a dart at the barn? I mean, it's true, and people, they wonder why things don't work. It's like put in a little bit more time, build that
yeah.
relationship, and better things will happen with it. Do you guys do a lot of business pieces in Lincoln?
Yeah, for sure. And before we started rolling, we talked a little bit about for local TV news, crime is always a big thing. Fortunately, here in Lincoln, Nebraska, crime is not a real problem, a real big problem anyway. So it's not like we have to cover that, devote resources to that on a daily basis. So yeah, business stories. Yesterday we were, I mean, the feels like temperature here was 106 yesterday, which is kind of rare that it's that warm. But we, somebody knew somebody who worked at a place called Universal Cold Storage. So we went to guys who, instead of out on the street sweating it out, we went to guys who are working in temps below freezing all day. Just kind of like a nice little flip to it, and learned a couple things too about, like, well, when we come in, we have to make sure we don't have any sweat on us because it will instantly freeze and you'll be uncomfortable. Yeah. So, but I mean, but again, so Universal Cold Storage, got airtime yesterday, not because of necessarily what they do. It's just where what their people are working in, that kind of thing.
Do you guys have an assignment desk that then filters to the producers, that then filters down to the reporters? Does it still work that same way?
Pretty much, yeah. We have an assignments manager, and then we'll have meetings 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock every day. The early ones for day side, the 2 o'clocks for night side. And then, yeah, and we figure out who's doing what. By then, assignments are usually handed out already, but we figure out, who's going to do what in each show, because we have a 4, 5, 6, and 10, and a 9 o'clock show on another channel. So we have a lot of different platforms. So we figure out who's doing what, who's going to contribute, how, and then how each of those stories are going to be presented differently, because we don't want to do the same thing, 4 times in one day.
How do you guys know at those different time frames who your different target customers are?
Research. We've done with the company. It's really nice. The company that owns us has spent a lot of money on research, so we know exactly who is watching. Part of that so that we can figure out where markets that we can go get, but it also helps serve the folks who we're already taking care of, and reinforces things that we do that they like, and we do more of that, or try to, and things that we do that they don't like, and we maybe try to minimize that a little bit.
So the Wheel of Fortune crowd and the OC crowd are a little different, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit. Yes.
You're going to get the diaper ads.
Lord forgive us if we cut in with a tornado warning during Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy. The world's going to end.
Crazy. So some really solid information there. I follow a lot of it too. How do you guys understand, or how many pitches are the reporters or producers pitching every day that aren't actually making it to air? And do you guys kind of refilter those to a later time, or you just give up on it?
No. Yeah, I think we try to keep a hopper of evergreen stories, something that can be worked all the time. So our request to the reporters is, bring us 2 stories to the meeting every day. Now, generally, we'll already have some stuff, on the table ready to be doled out. I'd prefer it if reporters come to us with stories, because it's something they're going to be more interested in, and it's going to be something that they'll probably pursue a little harder than if you give them something that they don't really dig. But we want them to have at least 2 stories a day. I'd be happy with 1. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. We're market 107, so we get them really young. So we've got a young crop right now, and they're just kind of learning the ropes. And I'd like more, but that'll come in time, hopefully.
What type of internal tools do you guys use that aren't proprietary?
I don't know exactly.
From a project management perspective. So, are you guys communicating back and forth with like Slack or email, or how are you guys communicating?
Yeah, we just got a new news director, actually, and like I mentioned, email is broken. I think we all it's so much. So he wanted everybody to, in like certain groups now we're all on Slack, and I hadn't been on before. So, but it's pretty good. I mean, I like that it's more focused, and I think if you see that little red number on your phone, like, oh, okay, that I can really answer. But if I look down and I see a red number on my email, I'm kind of like, whatever. But yeah, I think so. The Slack, we use Slack. That would probably be like the first step we've really taken towards using something other than email. So I would say that's it right now.
Where is media in general going? Is it going just to this, and are you guys building towards that, or how do you guys think about that? And as 2017 is really coming to an end.
Yeah, it's definitely going towards the phone. So we live stream everything that we do. We push everything we do to the app. Hey, for more on this, and so we try to create, make, if their story has some extras that just doesn't fit in the show, but there's still good content. We definitely try to get it on the web so that and it's there on the app for viewers. And we just try to make it as easy as possible for them. Snow alerts, school cancellations, all that kind of stuff right there. It's tough. I mean, I'm an old dog in the business, 27 years. I'm young, and I think in some ways, and I can still adapt. And I think there will always be a place for over the air, the traditional kind, but it changes. I mean, story content, like how many stories do you have in each block? That's an important question now because, viewers' tastes have changed. The amount of news they get without even trying has changed, and 15 years ago, that half-hour block was like, oh, that was our first real block of news they got since they read the newspaper in the morning. Well, that doesn't really happen now. Now you get news all the time. So you have to be constantly moving, constantly updating, constantly making it fresh, and knowing when to, okay, now we've worked that one to death. Let's move on to the next. Or even knowing before you've worked it to death, okay, let's move on to the next. Because that can drive people away too.
How, from a frequency standpoint, what is the number of, or the length of a package? And so a package is the story or piece that you're putting on. How long are you finding that people are engaging or watching that specific piece of content from on the air to online? And does that change?
I don't really have. I mean, sure, we probably have those numbers there. I don't have access to it. I mean, like I'll tell my reporter I want the package to be 1:15. I think that's a good enough time to get some good wheels on the ground and cover some real territory. But also it's not long enough to get a tune out. I think it really makes the reporter work to keep that package moving. So, but as far as time on site and all that stuff, that would be for our web guys because I don't know the answer to that.
Do you think that as people are consuming more content via web and mobile, that the on the air stuff will actually go longer, like mobile and web stuff is? So I think the average video on YouTube is 4 minutes long, right? And so if the average package is 1:15, 1:30 for on air, do you think that will get longer as things go by, or where do you kind of see that going?
I think if you figure in the in and the out, which is the reporter debriefing, the reporter introducing it at the end and then giving hopefully a good tag at the backside, then you're probably getting up close to 2 minutes. And I think that's pretty good. Although my rule really though always is if a story is 1:55 or whatever, but it hums, it really moves, I'll figure out a way to make that work. I mean, but that's because you got to reward good storytelling. But if it's it's 1:55 that drags, then I'm like, no, we got to cut. So the time stuff, I mostly to me is how does it feel? Does it feel long? Does it feel short? If it feels good and quick, then I really don't mind, however much time it is.
A solid long story is still a solid long story. It's better than a crappy short story.
Agreed.
If I remember correctly, in my journalism teaching, I was taught something about the diamond, where you give a really strong headline, you open it up, you give the meat, and then you go back into a big ending. Do you guys still use something like that in your world today?
I never heard the diamond. Not like that. I mean, what we do talk a lot about is layering. So I want to have some good information, maybe either from the reporters that's kind of a breakout, either on the before or the back end. So you really kind of flesh that story out more, give it even more context. People love data, and data journalism is becoming a huge thing. So we're trying to stay with the pace of the crowd in that way. So I think people really like it though. If you can flesh out something, give us what's another nugget, what's another kernel that you can give them that's meaningful and adds, like I said, context, because that always helps the viewer relate that story to themselves. They can like say, oh, okay, I can compare this to that, and I have an idea what you're talking about.
Very cool. Let's transition to the B block.
Okay.
Do a quick little commercial. No. So you are a communications coach.
Speech coach.
Speech
Yeah.
coach. How do you do that with your reporters too and your anchors and teach them how to get better, or are they pros already?
Well, no, I mean, like I said, we get a lot of young kids. It's their first gig out of school, and that's just you in the business too, though. You know that like sounding natural or sounding extemporaneous, in a pack especially, is really hard to do. I mean, it's a talent. I'm gonna have my kids this year. I'm gonna have them start watching John Oliver, except for like the bits where he swears, because I don't need parents calling me or whatever. But John does a great job. I mean, that show is written down to the word because they have to, because they're going after people, but they want to protect themselves and make sure they're on solid footing. But if you listen to John, it sounds like he's just off the cuff. This guy just knows it. And so that's a real talent and skill to have. So yes, we do talk about it. We work with them on it. But it's also too, it's just like, Malcolm Gladwell, you have to do one thing like a million times or whatever to become an expert. I don't remember exactly what the number is.
10,000 hours, I think.
There you go. Exactly. So they need those hours and they don't have them yet. And so it's just, keeping them on the rails, pointing down the right direction so that, they can get those 10 hours in faster.
It's interesting because I used to think like, oh, just reading this, talking this, like, oh, in your mind, like, that's not enough. Like, it's literally talking it through. And like, I don't think you have to be, so I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of keynote speeches, and you don't have to be in that actual building to practice, but you need to talk through that speech. And I used to never want to do that, but I'm like, you get stuck on a word, make sure you don't say that word again, or figure out how to get through it. And so if you do it the first time as the time that you're supposed to be on your A game, and you realize that you haven't prepared enough, it goes bad. And so we do a big thing every year called the State of the Startup Community Address. It's our version of the State of the Union, if you will, but about our small business area. And I get up there and we practice it for weeks. My team and I write this very long package, and we have a lot of points that we want to meet or that we want to make. And there are times where I'm reading it and I don't understand it. So we go through with my team, like, what did you mean? Like, let's get clarity here. Okay, I can't say that word, so we're going to use something else. And so I think it's important to really thoroughly go through and understand, because you're never going to memorize a 60-minute talk. But if you have the key points, you can get there. And so what do you think about like slides and presentation skills that you're seeing when you're coaching folks? Is that something that works well with them? Are there kind of cue cards or something to kind of remember stuff?
Right. Well, there are very specific rules. In any event where a note card is allowed, it can only be one 4x6 card. Now, you can have as many VAs as you want in like entertainment, informative. And my thing to the kids is always, is it motivated? Do you need this? Because it's like the same thing when you're editing a package. People love to use effects and wipes and this, that. And I'm like, I'm very much from the 60-minute school. That my boss grew up under Don Hewitt's thumb. So he kind of molded my thinking. And so I'm like clean, good, editing and storytelling and camera work will always carry the day. So if you're going to use effects, if you're going to use VAs, if you're going to use slides, they better be motivated. They have to be good and add to and not detract from whatever the message is you're trying to say.
How can someone understand what is good and what is bad? So I put something together. I think it's beautiful. How can I give myself a solid edit knowing that maybe something isn't as good as it needs to be?
I think it's tough to really do that because we're all biased towards ourselves. So you have to be brave enough to show it to others, people whose opinions you respect, people who are doing work that, like you say, that's where I want to be. That's the kind of stuff I want to be on par with. You have to be able to share it with, somebody like that who can be brutally honest with you, but, you can take the truth and use it to, advance whatever it is you're doing.
I think that's great advice. I think most people are too afraid to hear the truth. If I'm hearing something about my business, I'm like, yo, rip into me. Like, let me know. Like, I want to know it. And sometimes the people are not going to give you the information you want to hear. Sometimes the context is off and they're not the right customer, so it doesn't matter. But you can't improve if you don't know what to fix. And
exactly.
I remember, like, I still watch and listen to all my podcasts back, say, where can I improve? What can I get better on? Occasionally I'll go back and watch something for 5 to 7 years ago. I'm like, man, like I used to say, every 3 words. And
It's
repetition.
if you ever watch like if you're watching Family Guy or The Simpsons now, and then you catch a rerun on syndication from like their first season, you're like, how is this even the same show? But you could just see it's the same kind of thing. There, it's just really easy to see how the show has advanced and evolved and become more polished. And hopefully the same is true with our work. It's always going to be the same thing.
I bet whether it's the kids that you're teaching and coaching, or the new reporters and anchors that you're getting in Lincoln, like you can see from day one to the end of the year, it's completely changed because that repetition to get closer to that 10,000 hours, and it's so important. And whether it's talking to someone next to you in the mirror or wherever I like to call people and start telling them my speeches too, because I'm like, I can get it through. I'm like, wait, hold on, I gotta figure out what I just said. But you're getting information out of it, and then you can audit yourself, and I think it's good. What are some of the horror stories that you've seen in some of the competitions?
Oh, there's unfortunately sometimes, like, I feel really blessed. The school I coach at is the school that I went to. The team I coach is the team I competed for. So I am personally invested in this. But we'll go to competitions, and I know that our kids are going to be ready. We don't really let them just, you're going to do whatever. No. If you're representing the M, if you're representing, Malcolm, you're going to be ready because we compete at a certain level, and that's our expectation. There you go. But I'll see kids in rounds, and either I'm judging or I'm watching one of my students compete, and I'm just like, where is their coaching? Where is someone there to help this kid? And I feel horrible because they do what they think they're supposed to be doing instead of doing what they should be doing. And it's obvious, and I would never like want to single out any one kid. I don't think I even could. But I do know that I see kids who go in and they're with a program that doesn't care enough to push them to that next level or get them ready, and they're just out there floundering. And so they're, spending an afternoon, or well, in our case, usually it's a whole day of, finishing last in every round. You're not getting anything out of that. There are definitely kids that, when it comes times for, spots at state and nationals, I don't really feel too bad about anybody. I'm like, let's go get ours. But on the regular, yeah, there's schools that don't do it. And, a lot of times there's coaches that just don't have the support of the school or the administration to do what we do what some of the other schools that are really successful in state speech do. So I feel bad for those kids in that sense, that their community is not backing them.
Yeah, coaching, mentoring, growing up with people that can help you is so important. I have been not necessarily coaching, but I've been a judge for Junior Achievements, which is I guess a national organization that is helping groom entrepreneurs and teaching kids how to maybe start a business. And I for years, maybe 3 or 4 years, have been saying we need to be talking to these kids, that are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and letting them know that, hey, this next world that you're going into, you're going to create a lot of it. And I was teaching them some tips in entrepreneurship and business a couple weeks ago, and it was the first time I ever saw these kids actually realizing that, hey, I can create a business and do the world that I want, and I can start it right now, which is really cool because I had been saying it and I'd been hoping to see it, and then when you finally see it, you're like, wow. And I think a lot of it has to do with amazing teachers, and they have these magnet programs in southeastern Virginia, and they have an entrepreneurship school at one of the schools here, and so it's really focused on grooming those kids to do it. And at this competition, the 9th graders that were fresh into entrepreneurship were beating the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and made like $5,000 in a couple of weeks for this first competition. And someone was like, well, what do you think about this company? I'm like, well, they're the brightest kids. It's clear as day. They know everything. They know how to read business things. They know how to read a financial statement. And I actually think they might be able to make 6 figures to even $1 million by the time they're done if they keep with it.
Wow.
And just because you can see how bright they are already, and they're not being blocked. And I think so often we're blocking people instead of really allowing them to groom into or evolve into what they can be. So it's cool that you're doing that as well.
Yeah, one of the things I try to do is I be as honest with my reporters and my speechers. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you got to tell them you're not cutting the mustard, but you can, and here's how you can, and here's where you. And then conversely, when they start making progress, I'd be sure to let them know that, hey, I'm seeing it. You're getting there. You're doing it. So those kind of affirmations, sometimes you need a kick in the butt. And I always like people who are happy to get a kick in the butt. I'm always one of those persons, like, I'd rather give me a good swift kick in my butt and point me in the right direction than let me just, I think I'm doing it. Let me know. So I appreciate that. And I think a lot of the kids, and young reporters I work with do as well.
And so many people don't care enough to give any kind of feedback. And I think it's just so powerful to get that. I mean, I sometimes it really sucks to get some of that information, but I know that it's going to be valuable. And I know I guess I've coached or mentored some people, and I'm like, hey, like, you're not going to like this. And then 6 months later, they're like, you're right. You were very thankful, or you were very helpful. Thank you. Like, I needed to hear that. I didn't want to hear it then, but if you didn't tell me that, I wouldn't have understood how to get there. One thing that I think is cool is that because of the internet, because of YouTube, because of really unique reporting, if you will, and conversations, you and I met. And so I first learned about you through the Hot Ones YouTube video series, where Sean Evans interviews famous people and asks them progressively hotter questions while eating progressively hotter chicken wings. Do I do good on this transition here, by the way? Do you like it?
Pretty good. Very smooth.
So what I like about that is I think you and I would actually be friends if we lived in the same area. Yet we don't, but the internet allowed us to find each other, which is really cool. So you, over the last few years, decided to take this show, which just got 1 million subscribers, gets about 1.5 to 3 million views for every video. You give a ranking system of all of the challengers. How'd the idea come out? All the guests. How did you come up with the idea, and when did you really start getting connected with these folks?
Well, first, I think the first episode I saw was Mashable had tweeted out something about Key and Peele lose their mind over chicken wings. So I'm like, oh, I like Key and Peele, so let me see what that's about. So I clicked the link.
Season 2 or Season 1 for that?
That was Season 2, I believe. Yeah. And no, it was Season 1, yeah, because there were only 16 episodes in then. And as funny and hilarious as Key and Peele were and are, I was really taken with Sean Evans. Coming from the journalism side, I immediately saw somebody who has serious chops as an interviewer, who brought real questions and put real thought into it, and really, did his research in wanting to get, an interview that, not everybody else is going to get, especially because, he had the benefit of, dousing their palate with, hot sauce. So then I went back and I rewatched everything from the very first one. And it's like the Simpsons and Family Guy thing. You go back and you rewatch the old ones, you're like, oh my gosh, the show has come so far. But by the time I got all the way caught up to whatever the most recent clip was at that point, then I think there'd been a couple since Key and Peele. By the time I made my way through all of it, I was just like, well, I really, really dig this show, and I really enjoy what these guys are doing, and I get what they're doing. I just thought it would be funny to just kind of I call them the power rankings, and just kind of rank everybody that's been on the show, or at least in the top 10 of the rankings as I saw it. And I just kind of tweeted it out, and I tagged Sean and his producer, and I tagged First We Feast, and they liked it. And so they retweeted it out. And then, so I was like, oh, okay, cool. They dug it. So I did it again the next week. And then it just kind of became a thing.
Who was the first one? Who was number one first?
Key and Peele? Key and Peele were, yeah, at that point. And they were number one for a long time until Eric Andre came along.
That's the guy who hit his head with everything?
Yeah, he smashed everything over his head, which was just insane. And then, so then it just kind of became a thing. And at one point, they were like, hey, shoot us your address. You want to send you a box of some swag, just thank you for all the pub you're doing for the show. And then if you watched the episode I was on, Sean said, and I'd heard this a little bit from Chris Schomburger, their producer, that the power rankings kind of inspired them in the early days. And I was very flattered by that, because I didn't think I'd have that kind of reach or impact or whatever. I just did it because I really enjoyed it. And anything I generally do on Twitter is almost always to amuse myself. So, and if it amuses others, then that's a double bonus. and I just wanted to show them some, some love for what they were doing, because I could see even then in the early going exactly what they were doing, and I thought it was a brilliant idea, and I thought those were, the crew that they have doing it is the perfect crew to do it.
You can definitely see the evolution of it. The production value is stronger, but it was solid before. And what I like about it is very similar to what you said. Is the people being interviewed, like, that's cool, but you can see them anywhere. But
Yeah.
here's this very unique platform to do it on, which has probably never been done before. Maybe over beers or liquor, but not something
Some
like
weird Japanese game show.
right. And so it's very unique. It's the hot sauce. It actually, so I think we did it. My company did it a couple of months ago, and the hot sauce literally makes you get drunk. Like
It does.
you just sit there and you're like, you don't even have to eat a lot, and it kills you. But it's cool. I see it really allowing journalists to think not like they did forever, where behind a camera ask questions, when in fact you can go deeper, get a lot more people to watch it, and really learn things from people that you never would get that information before.
Right. I always feel like Sean wins one when the guy says, "Where did you find that? How do you know that?" And I think that's a win, because then that that's something they're not asked about regular, because obviously people on that level of fame probably can like say, okay, well, these are the 10 questions I normally get. And then, if Sean's doing his gig, then maybe it's a different 10 questions. And then add that to okay, I'm not going to put up that image that I want to project out, because I just want to survive and live to tell the tale. So they forget about all that. And then they start getting, like that old MTV real world thing. Here's what happens when people stop being polite and start getting real. Well, here's what happens when people start eating hot sauce and start getting real.
Are you a chicken wing fan?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Now, but I would never say I was like a hot sauce or hot, like, I 10 out of 10 times would almost always, although now that this has all happened, I've kind of started to change, but would get, Parmesan garlic. I'm like I would never like go to try to burn my face off, but obviously having done this now and found out, oh, I can actually do this. This is interesting. I find myself putting sriracha on a lot more stuff, which is no big deal, but
well, I would hope wing one not being that bad.
Exactly. Unless you're DJ Khaled.
That had to have been fake. I mean, he had to have just been like, I don't want to do not fake, but you get my point where he's like, what, I just don't want to, like, I mean, there's no way he could have taken those are the first 5 are basically the same.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said he punked out.
Yeah. What is your favorite hot sauce at this point?
I actually
on the show or not?
The hot ones. Okay, yeah. I actually use the hot ones quite a bit. If I had to pick one out of the current 10 in the lineup, the ghost pepper blueberry is pretty good, and the apocalypse
zombie apocalypse.
That's the one. Yeah, I mean that's hot, and it'll get your attention, but it actually has some flavor to it. So I like that. And then anything on the front end, those first 5 are all pretty. You can find those pretty much on any table in kitchens everywhere.
I'd interviewed a guy, Zvi Band from Contactually, which is a content management system out in D.C. He, over my shoulder, kept watching the hot sauces for 30 minutes and thought I was going to ask him about hot sauces. And he told me, and actually this stuff is really good, he sent me a bottle of this stuff. It's called Flaming Gator Sauce by JT Pappy's. This stuff is amazing on eggs. Put it on
okay.
On bacon, whatever. At first I was like, this is a big bottle, so is it gonna be super hot? It's not super hot. It's probably be like 3 or 4 on the scale of the wings there, but it's now my desk sauce, so it's pretty good.
A desk sauce. I had not heard of that. I like that.
I remember my team thinking that Da Bomb was the one that was the worst. That was the first one where they're like, oh my god. I think Mad Dog 357 was the worst. That was terrible. But we had milkshakes with it, which made everything better.
Sure.
How did they first reach out to you and say, hey, we want to bring you on the show?
Chris Schonberger, the producer, shot me a DM. And we had always kind of like, I don't even remember when we first started chatting. But they sent me that box of swag. And then I sent him and Sean some buddy of mine has a screen printing company, and he does these Woo Braska shirts. It's like the Wu-Tang Clan logo over Nebraska. So I sent them those because I knew they both liked the Wu-Tang Clan. So we'd always been talking, and then when Russell Brand happened, that we were talking even more then, and so then there had been a big push from a lot of people on like my reaction video to Russell Brand, and then the Russell Brand one. You got to get Brett on the show, get Brett on the show, get Brett on the show. And I was of the position, and I would always be of the position, like I will never ever ask for that. I am happy with my role as being a guy in the middle of Nebraska, sitting on my easy chair, making these things in my gym shorts, and that is all the connection I have if that's what they want. I was never going to ask for anything more. But yeah, Chris shot out a note, and he said, hey, we want to celebrate hitting 1 million fans or subscribers, and the best way, the best idea that we've been talking about is having you on the show. Would you be up for that? And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah, we're serious. And I was like, yeah, of course, I want to be on the show. So, and then when he told me there we were gonna flip the script, because I think that's great, because obviously, I mean, I like myself, but nobody really wants to know the inner workings of Brett Baker like that in that format anyway. But everybody does want to know probably a little bit more about Sean, because he never has to answer the questions. So I thought it was a brilliant idea, and it's right up my alley. So I did like he did. I spent a month researching, so it was a lot of fun to put that together and go there and then kind of collaborate with those guys. So yeah, Chris just shot me a DM, and then I think it probably happened 3 or 4 weeks after that.
Did they ever move it to email, or was it always on Twitter?
Yeah, we moved it to email once we started making plans for hotels and travel and all that stuff. So just to get everybody in on the chain, and some of the people, who weren't like in on Twitter and math DMs and all that jazz.
Very cool. When I told my team that you agreed to do this, they all started singing.
Brett Baker.
There it is.
Yeah.
He's a rank maker. What is it? It's something like that.
Littlest maker, power rank faker.
There it is.
Yeah.
So he's still number 1 right now?
Well, no. So like last week, because the problem was last week was the final episode of the season, so I did something new. The problem was that it was the top 10 was like getting log jammed. I couldn't like really move anybody in, because I'm like, well, these guys are all legends. So I figured out a system, and this is it just sounds so goofy just to make this up, but so like, okay, if you spend 8 weeks on the power rankings, you're eligible for Hall of Fame consideration. And then if you're on the rankings for 12 weeks, you're automatically in the Hall. So I went back and I looked at the numbers, and I put the first 14 people in the Hot Ones Hall of Fame and moved them off the power rankings list so that I could refresh that and give it all a new look, because they're going to have season 4 coming out. And that way it would kind of just mix it up and give it some life. And you could honor the guys, because like people are always like, where the hell is Tommy Chong? Where's Coolio? And I'm like, I know, those guys were awesome. They were great. And they were on the list forever. But if it's somebody who's just picking up the list now, they don't think, oh, maybe I should go back and read where all this started. So I can just say, hey, they're in the Hall of Fame. They've spent their time there. So they made way for somebody else. So that's kind of, because like when I started it, I had no idea that it was going to go for more, they're on episode, 75 now or something like that. I had no idea it was going to go this long. I did not put any forethought into, okay, well, what am I going to do when the list is just jammed with people you love? So I kind of had to make something and move them off. So right now, number 1 is Neil Tyson DeGrasse.
Do you have a website associated with it too, or is it just the screenshots of the?
I've got a Tumblr that I'm like working on building it out a little bit. That's slow going because I got work and life and other stuff happening. So there is a Tumblr in the works. I hope to have it up and like an archive all of the previous stuff in there, so that when the next season kicks off, boom, I can I'll tweet it out the same way I normally do, but I'll also have a link there, and you can go in there and check out and see all the other past lists and reviews and in the Hall of Fame and all that jazz.
I think the first time I watched the show was with Eddie Wang. And,
great episode.
Oh man, that was great. And so what I like about the show is that then because of their names, then on YouTube it then says, oh, this person was on Vice, or this person did this, and so you can start learning about all these other people they had no idea about, that Sean Evans just gets them on the show. And it's really cool because now I'm like, oh, those people are producing some really interesting content. They have done a lot of interesting things as professionals in what they're doing, but I never knew about them, and now I can learn about them, and it's really cool. When you're doing the rankings, is it just the people that you like the best, or is there really a formula that you follow?
There's no real hardcore formula. First you got to eat the 10 wings. That's the first step. But then I generally find the people who And like I said on the show, my barometer is, can you tell the history of the show without that person? So, and then if you go beyond that, people who really share with themselves, or people who really kind of create those moments that you're like, I'm never going to forget Bobby Lee pooping his pants on Hot Ones. I'm never going to forget Eric Andre smashing everything over his head. Bert Kreischer almost throwing up.
You met him recently, right?
I did. And so that's the funny thing. You talk about like social media and meeting and knowing, like, without actually having done it. So Bert performed in Omaha a week ago today, and I shot him a note and I said, hey, I'm going to come up and catch your show. It's called Call In Sick to Work. It's a noontime set, which is really great because I don't work on Friday, so it worked out for me. I didn't have to call in sick, but the place was sold out. But he's like, hey, great, hit me up after. Let's get some drinks and hang out. And so I, saw him and gave me a big old hug, and we took a picture. Of course, he's shirtless. He's like, this is really weird. This kind of feels like we already know each other. And I said, well, for me, that's the great part of social media. Like, if you can go ahead and get that, so that, like, when you actually do meet, and I always say in 3D, then it's just like, hey, it's good to see you again, even though I haven't seen you before. But it's just kind of that way. And there's a lot of people, like Coyote Peterson and I shoot messages back and forth every once in a while now. I had no idea who Coyote Peterson was until he was on the show, and he said that I still don't understand his thing. It's like, oh, if Brett gets through all the wings, he can have a bullet ant sting. Like, how is that a win? How is that a reward for getting through all 10 wings? I do not want a bullet ant sting. But yeah, right. So we talk about it and joke about it, but and he gave me some love, when my episode aired. So I appreciate that very much.
That's very cool. Was the first time that you went through the entire challenge the first time a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I'd collected almost, or I thought I did. Well, I bought all the sauces, and my daughter and I were going to do it when she came back up here for the Nebraska spring game. Like, hey, let's do it on Sunday. It'll be fun. We'll go over there, Aunt Carrie's house, and it'll be great. And I started gathering up the bottles, and I only had 9. And it turns out when I bought the Blairs, somehow it got sent, and I bought it on Amazon. It got sent to my old house in San Antonio. And I'm like, well, I have no idea. I forgot it. Like, I didn't get it. And so I don't want to do it and just go 9. So we pushed it off, and then the show happened. So that was the very first time I've done it. And I've done it one time since then. So now I've done it twice.
I remember when we shot ours, the Hot Ones hadn't come in yet. We had it before. Right. Because we had just bought it because I liked it. But it hadn't come in the order because we had to buy it from Heatness or something like that,
right.
That company, and all the other stuff we bought from Pepper Explosion, which is a hot sauce company in New Jersey. Very cool people, by the way. What was interesting is I actually mispurchased, and I didn't buy the Blair's Mega Death. I bought Blair's something that wasn't the hottest one.
Very similar, though.
Are they similar? Yeah. So
they look the same.
So it took about 10 days to get everything, and then we got it, and then we were like, oh, we're going to do this, and then Hot Ones hadn't come, and then literally at the end of it, it shows up, and I was like, yes, this is awesome. So was the second time easier than the first time?
No, actually it wasn't. It was because when I was interviewing Sean, I was so focused on A, making sure, I was asking the questions I wanted to ask, but B, giving him the time and space to answer, in a complete manner. And if I would have been like, oh my God, then you're not going to get that. So I just said, whatever happens, you got to lock it up. And number 8, the bomb was the only one that messed me up. I like to tell people I had my mouth open with my lips closed because I didn't want anything inside to I didn't want my tongue to touch my cheeks or the roof of my mouth. So I'm like, but my tongue and my mouth nothing's touching on the inside because it's so awful.
How many times did you have to practice the intro?
I wrote it the night before, and so I don't know, probably 20, maybe 25. I just kept running it over in my head because I didn't want to have to take 2. I didn't want to do that.
So you did one take wonder?
One take wonder, yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
I know. I was like, well, if I'm a speech coach and I can't get this out, then, the kids will be able to give me some business. So fortunately that didn't happen.
Are there other shows like the Hot Ones show that you've seen that do something that is as impressive, not necessarily with hot wings, but from an interview perspective that you think is maybe the next step of that?
It's a good question. Yeah, because I always view Sean as the next step of your traditional interview show. No, I really love what First We Feast. They've got a lot of other products that they're putting out. Like Sean in the Wild is great, but they also do another one called Food Grails that's awesome. That's like, okay, this is actual history. It's really great writing. It's superb, photography, videography, and editing. I really, really like those because those are like, you learn some history and stuff too. So those are, I would say, like, I don't know if there's another interview show that I really watch or pay attention to.
Do you think that the Hot One Show is basically the new late night TV then, where instead of the interview and sitting there in the seat, it's now something that's a little bit more unique and more people can actually see it every night?
It could be. It definitely could be. I think, like, for the networks, they're always going to have those, but I think they would be smart to have, like, a piece, a media property that's completely separate. That, like, hey, this is just a different arena, and we can do some different things. And I think it would be smart of them to give that a go. But I think right now, for the small groups, the younger, media entities, I think it's, great territory to roam and own. Because if you make, you do what you're doing well, then people are going to come. The eyeballs are going to come.
Yeah, and you definitely seen that as well. Who is Brett Baker?
I'm an old dude, man. I don't know. I'm a dad first. I got a daughter. She graduated from Nebraska last year. I got a much better kid than I deserved because I was kind of a rapscallion. I was not like in any legal shenanigans, but I was a handful for my parents and teachers, I know. And I got a kid who is absolutely the opposite of that. And so so I'm a dad first. And then I'm a storyteller, although coaching, now that I've, been back at the school and I've been coaching for 5 years, that's becoming a much bigger part of who I am because I love it so much. And I love the effect that I'm able to have on kids, if we're doing it right. And then, and I'm just friends with a lot of my former speechers who have graduated high school, gone to college. And I went to one of them's wedding last weekend. And, it's not uncommon for me and the assistant coach to call up a couple of guys, hey, let's go, get a bite to eat and drinks. And we still, just hang out and visit. So that, and a lot of them too, they'll like shoot me notes and, mentor type questions. So I really appreciate, being able to kind of have that role with them and provide that to them. So I don't know, married twice, divorced twice. So I kind of gave up on that. I figured I wasn't very good at that. And I'm a huge Husker fan. If you name it, the Huskers play it, I'll be there. My daughter and I, her sophomore year of college, we did this thing called, because I knew she was going to eventually, like, it wasn't too long. She was like going to be an adult and out on her own, doing her own thing. So her sophomore year of college, I came up with this thing called the Bug Eater Challenge. Bug eaters are what Nebraska Cornhuskers were called in the very, very early days. They were the Nebraska Bug Eaters. Don't ask me why. So I said, here's the challenge. We're going to see every single NCAA sport Nebraska competes in, compete at least once and throughout the course of the year. And so that's everything. That's, bowling, rifle, cross country. We missed their lone home cross country meet because it was always easy to get home stuff. We missed so we had to drive to South Dakota. We road tripped to watch Nebraska cross country, and then
there's a first for everything, I guess.
Right. So, but then we maintained a blog. We called it the Bug Eater Challenge, and then we'd blog about, I'd blog my experience and my view, and she would blog hers, and then we'd post pictures of us there doing it, and it was a blast. It was so much fun to celebrate being a Husker with her because there was no, she grew up in Texas, so there was no guarantee that she was ever going to choose Nebraska or become a Cornhusker, academically at least. And then just to get to spend that kind of time with your kid, supporting something that, you dig was super. I mean, I always said at the beginning, I always want to say, remember when, rather than I wish we would have. And so now we can always say, you remember that? And like, oh yeah, we sat and we watched rifle in a gym on a monitor. It was weird, but it was fun because we did it together.
Well, kind of along those same lines, what's the best sports experience you've ever had? Or the best game that you've ever been to?
Wow. Geez. The 2001 Nebraska-Oklahoma. I was living in Texas, and my dad, we got tickets.
Eric Crouch is the quarterback there?
Eric Crouch. Black Flash 41 reverse, I believe, or 41 reverse Black Flash, something like that. Anyway, that was the throwback pass to Crouch, and he scored what turned out to be the winning touchdown. But that day, so I got tickets to that game with my dad and my two brothers, And I had to work the night before in Texas because I was a sports producer. High school football, obviously huge, and they're like, you can't go on Friday. So I had to fly up to Omaha on Saturday morning. But I was like, it's cool. Look, that game's going to be huge. We're one, they're two, or it was flipped. They were one, we were two. There's no way that's not going to be an evening game, or at worst a 2:30 game. Well, it turned out to be an 11 o'clock kick, and I landed at Omaha at like 10:40. So this was a great plan. So I landed in Omaha. I didn't check any bags. I get down. My rental car is a red Mustang. So I think, okay, well, this is a good sign. Got on the highway. There was nobody on Nebraska roads. Nobody.
Because they're all at the game.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm hauling ass. And the plan was I just go to my mom's house. I called my mom and I said, hey, I'm getting close. So she's literally in her car. Car's rolling. I park my car because I didn't want to find parking. Hop in hers. She takes me to the stadium. I walk in. I got there about maybe there's like 10 minutes left in the second quarter. So I'd missed 20 minutes of game time. But nothing had really happened. I think the score was like 6-3 or something like that. And so then I got to see all that. The Eric's, winning touchdown, the pass back to him was amazing. I think that day was probably like one of the best. I saw the U.S. play England at Wembley when I was living in England, which was awesome. We got smoked, I think, 3-0. But that was still pretty cool just to be there, a part of that.
The 0-1 Nebraska football team, they lost to Miami in the finals?
Yep. And that was another ticket adventure. So I called my dad and I said, we got to go. I was a financially a good enough place where I'm like, hey, we can do this. Let's go. My dad, he's a world-renowned psychologist, so he was plenty able to do whatever he wanted. And I said, I got a line on tickets. And he's like, oh, I can get them for free. I'm like, you can get them for free? He's like, yeah. So don't worry about tickets. Let's take care of the rooms. And I'm like, okay. So I get up there. I spent the day in Burbank or whatever, and he joins me like I think the next day. And so we're walking in, and if you remember that game, the Rose Bowl, seats like 80 some odd thousand. There's this huge sea of red, and then there's a little sliver of green and orange. We were the two dots of red in the middle of the sliver of green and orange because he got his tickets from a University of Miami booster. And so I'm like, Dad, I would rather have paid $150 to be miserable while we're getting our butts kicked over there than like being surrounded by all these delirious Miami fans. He was like, So it was good. Yeah, it was a good trip though.
Oh, I went to West Virginia University, and when I went there, we were good at football and basketball, so we had some good games there, and that was always fun. Sports is a magical thing. Brett Baker, I appreciate your time today. Learned a lot about you and some ways to get press, speak a little bit better, and really what your favorite hot one sauce is as well, because it's the hot one sauce. And I appreciate your time today, and looking forward to year 4 of the rankings soon.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Well, it was my pleasure. Happy to do it.